What does a country sell when it has no oil, no minerals, almost no farmland, no large domestic market, and serious doubts that it can survive? Singapore's answer was not a thing, it was a promise. Your factory will have power. Your ship will leave on time. Your contract will mean what it says. Your workers can be trained. Your permit will not disappear into a drawer. And the rules tomorrow will look enough like the rules today for you to risk your money here. That promise became Singapore's product: reliability, efficiency, stability, and access to the world. Kuan Yew was the political force at the center of it, but he did not build Singapore alone, and the country was never literally a business. Citizens are not employees. A nation cannot measure every human need as profit and loss. Still, the business metaphor reveals something important. Lee and his team built a national operating system in which housing, factories, schools, ports, anti-corruption enforcement, and foreign investment were designed to make one another work. And that system came with a lasting contradiction. The concentration of authority that accelerated execution also restricted political freedom. On August 9, 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia. Independence arrived with a proclamation, a flag, and fear. The island had been counting on a common Malaysian market. Now, that plan was gone. Unemployment was high. Housing was overcrowded. Communal violence was a recent memory. Indonesia's confrontation with Malaysia threatened the region. British military bases supported a huge share of local economic activity, but Britain was preparing to leave. Lee's televised emotion that day became famous because the danger did not feel theoretical. Singapore had gained sovereignty before it had secured a way to earn a living. The pressure inside the cabinet can be reduced to a dramatized exchange. Lee asks, "If no one needs us, how do we survive?" Finance Minister Goh Keng Swee answers, "Give the world a reason to need us. Jobs first, capability next." Those are not recorded words, but they capture the problem the government tried to solve. Lee supplied urgency, political authority, and an obsession with results. Goh supplied much of the economic architecture. S. Rajaratnam built foreign relationships and articulated a multiracial national identity. Toh Chin Chai helped build the party, cabinet, and symbols of the new state. Othman Wok defended a multiracial Singapore through years of communal tension. Lim Kim Sun drove public housing. Han Swee Sen led investment and industrial institutions. Civil servants converted decisions into routines, and outside government, workers retrained, families moved, businesses invested, and ordinary people lived through an experiment whose outcome nobody could guarantee. The economic machine began taking shape even before independence. In 1961, Singapore created the Economic Development Board. EDB was not just a ministry with reports. It was meant to find industries, court investors, prepare land, and remove practical obstacles to production. Goh worked with Albert Winsemius, the Dutch economist who led a United Nations industrial mission. At a time when many new states protected domestic companies from foreign competition, their strategy moved in the opposite direction. Singapore's local market was too small. It would invite multinational companies, import capital and technology, make goods for other countries, and connect itself directly to global demand. Their gamble can be framed as another dramatized exchange. Goh looks across muddy Jurong and asks, "Who builds factories in a swamp?" Winsemius answers, "No one, unless the roads, power, and land are ready before they arrive." So the government spent heavily on Jurong Industrial Estate. Hills were cleared, swamps were reclaimed. Roads and utilities appeared where skeptics saw expensive, empty land. Critics called it Goh's folly. At first, the factories were modest: garments, toys, wigs, simple assembly. Their purpose was not glamour. Their purpose was jobs, skills, and proof that the machine could run. After separation ended hopes for a Malaysian common market, export manufacturing became an urgent necessity. EDB went abroad and sold a coordinated package. Imagine a representative meeting with an American executive. The executive says, "You have no big market, no raw materials, and not enough trained technicians." The EDB officer replies, "We have a port, prepared land, political commitment, and one office responsible for solving the rest." That was the offer. Singapore could not make geography disappear, but it could reduce uncertainty. In 1968, National Semiconductor opened a plant. Other electronics companies followed. The government learned what investors needed, trained workers around those needs, and used each successful factory as evidence for the next. This was not laissez-faire economics. The state planned land, built infrastructure, offered incentives, disciplined budgets, recruited talent, and intervened aggressively. But it used that state capacity to connect Singapore to international competition, not shelter it from the world. Housing was another part of the operating system. In the early years, many families lived in crowded shophouses, informal settlements, or wooden homes vulnerable to fire and disease. The Housing and Development Board, led first by Lim Kim Son, built at emergency speed. More than 31,000 flats went up in roughly 4 years. By the end of 1965, HDB had completed about 53,000. The move could still be painful. A representative resident says, "You are asking me to leave the neighborhood that raised my family." The housing officer answers, "I am asking you to trade danger and uncertainty for clean water, sanitation, and a home you can eventually own." Public housing was shelter, but it was also labor policy, health policy, savings policy, and nation building. The Home Ownership for the People scheme began in 1964. From 1968, citizens could use Central Provident Fund savings toward a flat. Ownership gave families an asset and gave the new country millions of personal stakes in its future. The same systems thinking shaped people and infrastructure. Rajaratnam, Singapore's first foreign minister, helped a tiny state gain recognition and relationships. His national pledge expressed equality across race, language, and religion. To Chin Chai helped create the flag, crest, and anthem. Othman Wak's presence as a Malay leader in the PAP government mattered in a country trying to prove that citizenship would not belong to one ethnic majority. English became a common working language and a bridge to global commerce, while students also learned a mother tongue. Schools expanded. Vocational institutes and technical programs tried to match education with factories that needed machinists, technicians, supervisors, and engineers. A representative factory manager says, "I can buy the machine. I need people who can run it precisely." A worker replies, "Then train me for a future, not just for today's production target." That tension mattered. Industrial discipline created opportunity, but it also demanded conformity. The government, employers, and aligned unions developed a tripartite system that reduced disruptive strikes and coordinated wages and training. It made production more predictable. It also narrowed the space for independent labor power. Meanwhile, Singapore made a giant bet on movement. It invested in roads, power, water, telecommunications, and container shipping. The Tanjong Pagar container terminal opened in 1972, the first of its kind in Southeast Asia. The island positioned itself not as the end of a supply chain, but as a fast, dependable connection inside thousands of them. When Britain withdrew its forces, Han Sui Sen led the conversion of military land and facilities into commercial uses. Another threat became raw material for the operating system. Clean administration was part of the same product. Corruption had existed under colonial rule, and Singapore's Anti-Corruption Bureau predated Lee's government. But the new leadership strengthened laws, investigations, penalties, and the expectation that public office was not a private marketplace. Picture a representative investor sliding an envelope across a desk. The civil servant pushes it back and says, "The application is here. The rule is here. You will get the same answer without that." The point was bigger than morality. Bribery is a tax on uncertainty. If every official can invent a price, no plan is reliable. By recruiting capable administrators, assigning responsibility, and punishing corruption, Singapore turned clean execution into an economic advantage. Success created a new problem. Cheap labor would not remain cheap, and other countries could offer more workers and more land. So the system upgraded. Garments and simple assembly gave way to semiconductors, precision engineering, petrochemicals, finance, logistics, and more advanced services. Training became more technical. Infrastructure became more specialized. EDB kept searching for the next industry before the previous one stopped being enough. This is where the startup metaphor becomes tempting. Singapore behaved like an organization obsessed with survival, customers, talent, and reinvestment. But the methods used to create alignment were not merely managerial. Lee's worldview came from Japanese occupation, anti-colonial struggle, communist organizing, communal violence, and a region full of fragile states. He believed disorder could destroy Singapore before democratic argument had time to solve anything. In 1963, Operation Cold Store detained opposition politicians, union leaders, and others without trial. The official case was that communist subversion posed a real security threat. Critics have long argued that the operation also crushed legitimate political competition. That dispute remains part of Singapore's history. Barisan Sosialis later withdrew from parliament and boycotted the 1968 election. The PAP won every seat. Independent union power weakened. Security laws allowed detention without trial. Newspaper rules, public assembly restrictions, and defamation suits placed severe pressure on journalists, activists, and opposition politicians. The core political conflict can be expressed through one final representative exchange. A government official says, "If unrest destroys the economy, freedom will not feed anyone." A political critic answers, "If the government alone defines unrest, when does emergency discipline ever end?" Singapore's prosperity does not make that question disappear. Supporters can point to real achievements: mass housing, rising incomes, clean water, education, jobs, safety, infrastructure, and a state capable of finishing difficult projects. Critics can point to real costs: detention without trial, constrained media, limited protest, weakened opposition, and a political culture in which challenging the government could carry extraordinary risk. It is too simple to say repression created prosperity. It is also too simple to describe Singapore's success while treating political control as an unrelated footnote. Both grew inside the same operating system. Lee stepped down as Prime Minister in 1990, but remained influential as Senior Minister and later Minister Mentor. The system outlasted his premiership because it was made of institutions, incentives, trained people, and habits of planning. That may be his most important legacy, and the reason credit cannot belong to him alone. Goh Keng Swee designed. Win Simius advised. Han Swee Sen and EDB executed. Lim Kim San built. Rajaratnam connected the island to the world. To Chin Chai and Othman Wok helped define what the nation was supposed to be. Civil servants enforced the routines. Workers learned new skills. Families moved into unfamiliar towers. Businesses took risks. Citizens accepted, supported, negotiated with, and sometimes resisted the state. Singapore did not discover oil. It made trust valuable. It promised the world that ships, factories, contracts, and institutions would work. In return, its government asked citizens to trust that concentrated authority would work for them. The first promise became one of the most successful development strategies in modern history. The second remains the debate at the heart of Lee Kuan Yew's Singapore.